Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the last two transitions. This is the tool right here. This you can go on our website, download it, install it on your computer, or we have an online version that's on our new African Futures website that we're going to be launching today. And Aaron's going to demonstrate that. But this is a version of the tool. So the fourth transition, right? I talked about human development, I talked about demographics and material power. This fourth transition is about energy. I'm not going to focus very much on it, but it's about what you'd expect. Fossil fuels begin to peak based on data that we use from geological surveys and certain companies that provide us with data on overall reserves. You can see that we're going to eventually have to transition towards fossil fuels, towards renewable energy. So the top three lines represent three different types of fossil fuel production. The red line represents coal production, the green line represents oil production, and the blue line represents gas production. We see general peaking in oil and gas production across time. More of a plateau, though, than what some people would consider a precipitous cliff that we'll be falling off of. The key transition is obviously this bluish gray line, which represents an aggregate measure of overall renewable energy production. Currently, levels of renewable energy production globally are incredibly low, right, as you can see. Much lower than nuclear or hydro, which are the other two lines at the bottom. Renewable energies are getting cheaper to produce and distribute across time. They will eventually become cost competitive with fossil fuels as fossil fuels become harder to get, and this will represent a large global transition that has a lot of really positive potential for African development. So that's the fourth transition. I'm going to move quickly to the environmental transition. Again, this is the model. You can use this on your own. Let's talk about climate change. Climate change has potentially real and potentially very devastating impacts on development across the world, and particularly in Africa. We do not understand the full extent of impacts, but some things that we can begin to get a handle on have to do with climate change's impact on agricultural yields. And this has to do with measuring how levels of precipitation are changing across countries and levels of temperatures are changing, right? So what this measure is this is a measure of the impact of climate change on agricultural yields across selected countries and regions relative to 1990. So what it says is that if you're at a 0, like we see here for the US, climate change will have no impact on agricultural output relative to 1990. Okay? If you're down here at -6, over the next 4 decades, climate change will have a 6% decrease. It will have a 6% negative impact on agricultural yields on average across Africa. Okay? Africa's hit. India's hit. You can see the relative. China actually benefits from climate change on agricultural yields. Now, agricultural yields aren't the end-all in the discussion about climate change, but they're one thing that we can begin to put a handle on. And so it's important in making decisions about the future of Africa to consider all of these different transitions and trends. The last bit I'll talk about before we move into the new website is water use. On a global basis, again comparing the same countries and groups, we don't see a lot of freshwater stress in Africa as a whole, right? This is a measure of the amount of fresh water that's being used as a percentage of total renewable water resources that are coming into the country every year. We see more stress in India, where it says that 35% of renewable resources that are available are being used. So that's moving in a much more stressed direction. But down here's Africa. Looks very sustainable in terms of overall water use across time. But let's break Africa down. Let's just look at 5 main regions of Africa. It's a very different story. Northern Africa is experiencing very large water stress issues, and these are not only going to continue, but they're going to get worse across time. Right? This is another kind of environmental transition that we need to be aware of in our decision making. I'm going to turn this over to Aaron. We're interested in using these global trends to form a foundation for our specific analysis of issues in Africa. What kinds of policy choices can we make today, and how will those impact across all of the systems that Barry identified earlier? This is a powerful tool, and it's a tool that should be utilized in decision making. This is the beginning of our efforts to reach out into the African milieu to put out our information, our writing, our thinking, and our analysis in order to hopefully help us make better decisions to promote human development. I think Aaron's going to get into that in a bit. Thank you.